Episode 5 The Call. Childhood was an amazing period of life, a time when you were unconditionally dependent on the decisions of adults. Audrey always considered herself an obedient child and never thought of being anything else. Obedient children were held up as examples to neighbors, but even obedient children were sometimes drowned in the river by distraught mothers. "Mom, I don't want to drink it. I'm fine. Nothing hurts." "I know, honey, but this will help you." Audrey often saw fear in her mother's eyes. That fear had many shades, most often superstitious, but rarely gratuitous, and when next to her father, always reverent. This time, the fear was animalistic, forcing her to seriously consider her small position in this vast world. "I don't need help." "You do, Audrey, we all do." From outside the church, an order came again. Open the doors and go out one by one. The women's hands began to shake even more, splashing muddy liquid from the plastic cup onto the floor. "Come on, honey, everyone drank it, even your dad and I. Now it's your turn." Most of the parishioners were sleeping peacefully, sitting on the pews. Some continued to pray frantically, but their whispers grew quieter by the second. A very young woman with a baby was sobbing loudly. The pastor had made her child drink, deciding for some reason that her mother would not be able to do so herself. "Drink, honey, or Dad will have to make you." A man tried to get to the door, but the man standing at the exit hit him with the butt of a gun. "Why can't we leave?" Her mother had already spilled more than half the liquid. She grabbed Audrey's hands and forced the pitiful cup into them. "Do you trust me?" "Who would I trust if not you?" There was no more time to talk. Noticing her confusion, her father was making his way over to his daughter. "I trust you, Mom. I trust." But Audrey did not have time to raise the cup to her lips. Faceless people in black uniforms dropped in through the church windows like wingless angels. Splinters rained down on the heads of the parishioners, but none of them even looked up. Shouts rang out. The woman pulled her daughter close to her. "Mom!" Her mother's tight embrace kept her from moving or breathing. Time slowed down. Seconds dragged on in the dense horror that filled the church. And then the masked angel ripped Audrey from her mother's suddenly weakened arms and dragged her towards the exit. The last thing Audrey remembered was the sight of her mother's serene face. Like a bastion of calm in an abyss of pain, she slept with a baby in her arms. "Mom. Mom." Audrey breathed. His stern voice made her take in a shaking breath, breaking through the painful lump in her chest. Tears in her eyes blurred her vision. The nightmare felt so real. "Where am I?" "You're safe, Audrey. Everything is fine." His cold fingers pressed gently against her burning cheeks, forcing her to focus on this familiar face. The remnants of the past slowly evaporated with the last of her tears, and Mikhail carefully brushed them away with his thumb, helping her to come to her senses. "What happened?" Her voice sounded terribly hoarse. Mikhail was sitting on the edge of the bed. He pulled away to hand her a glass of water. With each sip, she felt recent events resurface in her memory. "I was poisoned. You had a fever. You were screaming. Does anything hurt?" After thinking for a moment, she answered honestly, "No. I had a strange dream." Relaxing a little, Mikhail carefully took the empty glass from her hand. Audrey watched the smooth way the boss moved and noticed how close he was to her. Now that his hands were free, he unconsciously placed them on hers. One careless movement, and she could touch his skin. "What were you dreaming about?" "What do I say? It was a nightmare. Technically, my parents. I dreamed about my father's church and its parishioners. Is it a painful memory? Yes, it is. And how often do you have these dreams? Almost every night. Very rarely. Is there's something I can do to help? You're already helping me a lot. It seemed he might have expected a different response, but he suppressed his impulse to protest. What kind of help are we talking about? Alright, I won't push you. Trust has to be earned, after all, and so far all we have to manage to do is almost lose you. Images of Silent Grove, the treetops overhead, Otto, and the wolf began to flash in her mind's eye. Was I poisoned? The water in the village was poisoned, yes. How are the others? Mikhail fell silent. Audrey shuddered, imagining the worst. Noticing her reaction, he said quickly, "They're fine. You don't have to worry." Raphael had to leave due to some urgent matters, but he stayed by your side all night. I had to kick the others out of your room. David's highly emotional state was of no use here. Neither was Cassiel's cold anger. It was hard to believe that, out of all of them, she was the only one who almost died. Even though the guys gave me almost all the water to me. Right, because they blame themselves. What about the client? How's Rada? Rada's in the hospital now. Her condition is worse than yours. That's strange. I didn't notice that she had any symptoms at all. As for the locals, it would be difficult to prosecute them for burning a so-called witch. Perhaps the entire village witnessed the murder on that fateful evening, but no one has come forward yet, and probably never will. No way. It will be even more difficult to punish the factory director. When things went wrong, Otto sold a majority stake to the government. We can only hope that sooner or later they will at least give the villagers a payout and apologize. Wow. No one deserves what the parents of Silent Grove have been through. Money and apologies won't bring their children back. Nothing in this world is certain. But of course, I would also like for the guilty to be held accountable for their actions. Lost in thought, Mikhail turned his gaze to the bouquet of flowers decorating the bedside table. Everyone is terribly worried about you. Even Fel hasn't left Astrea. She is waiting for you to come too. And if I didn't have the power to kick people out of the room, all of your colleagues would be gathered here right now. Audrey caught herself thinking that she would like to see David right now. And to have him sit on the edge of the bed and crack his jokes. There's always laughter in his eyes. I wonder if there's room for anything more serious in them. I hope Cassiel is okay. The unexpected thought took her by surprise. Can I get him out of my head? To be honest, you made me rather nervous too. I knew I was taking a risk when I hired you, but I didn't think I was risking my own peace of mind. By the way, a certain Ruth has already called us several times. I'm afraid if you don't call her back, she'll come here with the police. Several times? How long was I unconscious? A little over a day, but don't worry, you are physically healthy. Did a doctor come to examine me? I examined you. He did. Realizing what that meant, her cheeks went warm. How exactly did this examination take place? I think I slept through the fun part. Are you a doctor? I don't have a medical license, but it's unlikely you'll find anyone more qualified than me in this city. I wish I could say the same about myself. Well, I won't take up any more of your time. As he stood up, he gave her a thoughtful look. This time, I'm the one going on a mission, and you and your colleagues are staying home. Anything interesting? That depends on your point of view. Calls from the other side. Really something you can hear without being curious? A lot of them? Enough that the boss has ordered me to investigate. What a strange coincidence. Dead people visit me in my dreams, and now Mikkel says there's a way to talk to them. Do you believe that's possible? I wouldn't go there otherwise. Will you take me with you? Would you like that? To see a real miracle, of course. I don't think that's a good idea. I need to convince him to bring me along. This case is important to me. I know it sounds strange, but I feel like I have to go. And please don't ask why. If you really feel like you're ready, I'll be happy to take you with me. Your counsel could make my job a lot easier. Thank you. Fel and I will be leaving in a few hours. If you change your mind, just let me know. I'll be in my office. As soon as he left the room, Audrey listened to her body. She got out of bed carefully, afraid of getting dizzy, but nothing of the sort happened. I doubt Mikkel's some kind of miracle worker. My poisoning probably just wasn't that bad. Audrey tried not to think about how Rodda's a serious condition didn't fit that narrative. She headed for the shower. I want to look stunning today. Gray routine, serious approach, playful mood, always on top. But brand new, get everything. Let me see here. I kind of dig this one. Playful, always on top. Brand new. Yeah, I think I'll go with the one I like. Continue. Now for my hair. Girl, I swear, if you stray too far, we're going back to the other one. You look kind of like Storm. Okay, maybe. Stylish light, stylish dark. That's not really dark. I'll accept this one. Should I choose a different hairstyle? No. The feeling of inevitability that had long been part of her swirled in her stomach, making her nauseous. To get rid of it, she had to find the strength to make one call. I need to call Ruth. Audrey paced the room nervously, unable to sit. On the 10th ring, she began to hope that her friend would not answer. But that hope was immediately dashed by an excited scream. On the 10th ring! Does this woman not have voicemail set up? Oh my god, Audrey! Where have you been? I'm still in Astrea. Glad to hear from you. You have no idea how glad I am. You spoke to my boss. I thought he was hiding something from me. I swear, if I hadn't heard your voice in an hour like he promised, I would have called the cops. Ruth. Audrey felt that her friend was trying to hide the real reason for her calls behind a constant stream of words, and she had neither the time nor the energy to wait for the reason to come up naturally. Tell me what's going on. Your patient is out of his coma. The rumors the media started can now take shape and become my new reality. He claims that your sessions put him in the state he's in. His parents have hired a new lawyer. I see. Goodlam abandoned me, and I won't be getting my license back. Forget about the license, Audrey. They want to lock you up for malpractice. My legs buckled under the weight of the realization that there was no escaping the past. It was fun basking in the attention of strangers and chasing demons, but reality is always worse. I hear there's a lawyer at Astrea. Can't he help you? I can't admit to them that I don't have a license. Why not? They don't need a psychiatrist. You can be a consultant even without it. Who'd want a consultant who accidentally drives her patients to a psychotic break? Ruth, please. Audrey felt so hollow that her cracked voice seemed to be all that was left of her. It's much easier for the hospital director to say that I failed everyone. Easier to throw me to the wolves and prove my innocence. Do you have a plan? The ridiculous question forced a short, hysterical laugh out of her throat. A plan. I'll figure something out. Maybe I'll talk to his parents. After all, they know it was their son who attacked me. They know I was defending myself. I also made a friend in the police force. Maybe with their help, we'll be able to find Goodlum's missing security footage. But to be honest, I have no idea how a video from a hospital hallway is going to help me. Audrey, I know what will help you. What? Come with me to Sunday service, please. Audrey wanted to howl in despair. She wanted to beat herself up for the fleeting hope that Ruth's words had sparked. It's not her fault, she really believes. Okay, Ruth. See you on Sunday. We're not going, are we? There was a pause. Audrey couldn't believe she had really agreed. Ruth was silent for fear of scaring her into reconsidering. Ruth, I have to go. See you soon, okay? Okay. Tossing the phone aside, Audrey tried to put herself in the shoes of her patient's parents. To calm the raging anger inside, to stop choking on the bitter resentment that was already spilling over the edge. If I keep thinking about this, I'll never get out of this hole. I'd better go give everyone the good news that I'm fine. She didn't have to wander around the mansion long. As she stood on the stairs, Audrey heard voices coming from the kitchen. And judging by their tone, the conversation was anything but friendly. What's wrong with them? Dust motes swirled serenely around the room in the dawn light, but the atmosphere was tense. David sat in the chair, his legs crossed in an imposing manner. His deliberate, relaxed pose didn't hide his real mood. Cassiel didn't try to hide his anger. He looked at David aggressively and directly. Looks like I'm right on time. Good morning. If you can call it that. Their expressions instantly changed. The both of them forgot about each other and turned their attention to her. David was the first to react to her appearance. He jumped out of his seat and was beside her in an instant. Without hiding his genuine joy, he pulled Audrey towards him and hugged her tightly. You're smothering me? If you had decided to leave me in all this gloom, I would have brought you back from the other side. I have no doubt. This time, David broke the embrace surprisingly quickly. Pulling back because Cassiel's here, David gallantly led Audrey to the dining table, sat her down on a chair, and walked over to the stove. You must be hungry. You haven't eaten for a whole day, poor thing. Without even asking what she wanted, David started cooking. Audrey stared at the silent Cassiel. It's okay, big guy, you can talk to us. Are you avoiding looking at me? How are you holding up? Better now. What a comprehensive answer. Glad you're having fun. I can't help but smile when I see your gloomy face. What did you guys do while I was sleeping? Well, we wandered around the rooms, worried about your condition. That's precious. I hope the bad guy with the gun didn't make you change your mind and want to leave us. It was terrible, of course, but I knew you guys wouldn't let me get hurt. I'll try to ignore it. I think he was bluffing. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to write my resignation letter. knew you guys wouldn't let me get hurt. In response to her sincere statement, David winced, but remained silent. Cassiel looked away sullenly again. Are there any new assignments? Only for Mikkel. He's leaving today. Oh, I know about that. I just asked to go with him. The two men expressed their opinions in unison. You what? Are you crazy? Do you have a problem with that? Yes, I won't be there to keep an eye on you. And you'll only get in Mikkel's way. Audrey didn't have time to get upset. The pleasant, friendly atmosphere that had sprung up from her arrival was shattered by a single sentence. You already kept an eye on her, protect her. You almost got her killed. The deafening silence was broken only by the sound of the coffee machine, letting them know that the beverage was ready. Is that what they were fighting about? Cassiel didn't do anything wrong. It's not his fault the water was poisoned. Her attempt to defuse the situation only made things worse for some reason. I don't need your support. I'm not trying to support you. The rudeness left her feeling awkward. I shouldn't have said anything. Oh, Cassiel, you are so cold and aloof. Are you deliberately drawing attention to yourself? I don't need it. Of course, you're not like that. Whatever David was talking about, it was clear that the words held great meaning for the both of them. You better stay away from this night, little witch. You will be safer that way. Cassiel abruptly stood up. Fearing the men might fight, Audrey stood up as well. Make your jokes while you can, David. History will not be rewritten by your idiotic humor and your fake cheer. Oh, you always confuse my father's story with mine. I'm clean. Of course, everyone gets their hands dirty, but not you. Laugh it up. Sooner or later, you will see the eyes of the past in your reflection, and then you won't be laughing. David wasn't smiling anymore. Oh, then you'd better shut up, Cassiel. Unless you want to be the butt of all my jokes. Guys? Her trembling voice snapped them out of it. Cassiel clenched his jaw and stormed out of the room. David silently took 2 cups of coffee and sat down at the table. Well, this one's a hard one. Who am I supposed to support? Can I just go to my room? I'm gonna support David. He made me coffee. Audrey sat down next to David, picked up the second cup. She decided to remain silent for as long as it would take. The important thing is that he knows I'm here. After 2 sips of strong coffee, David broke the silence. You can ask. What was he talking about? My father. Cassiel's convinced that madness is hereditary. She didn't want to cite the statistics that prove Cassiel was right, in a way. Audrey, instead, placed her hand on his and squeezed it gently. She wanted to say that she understood him like no one else, but she knew all too well that such words were usually of no use. What's wrong with him? It was clear that this conversation was difficult for David. He stared into his cup, trying to find the right words. If I told you that he sold his soul, would you believe me? Don't answer, though. It's easier for me to believe it's true. If it isn't, then I won't be able to find any excuse for his actions. Audrey squeezed his hand a little harder, making him look into her eyes. We're not our parents, you know. It doesn't matter if I know that. No, David, that's all that matters. With a sad smile, David pulled his hand away and smoothed his disheveled hair. He tried to give his face its usual playful expression, but she no longer looked at him the same. There's too much hiding behind that smile of his. I don't want you to see my family history in my eyes. And why should I talk about sad things when I want to talk about something completely different when I'm next to you? Like what? Like how much I missed you. How I paced restlessly the whole time, or how Cassio's sidelong glances at you annoyed me. Oh man, this sounds dangerous. They're not the best of friends as it is. You've been occupying too much of my thoughts lately, little witch. And for the first time I missed almost everything the realtor's lawyer said at the trial. Can you imagine that? As soon as he started describing the narrow space between the walls, all I could see was your face. And the tiny distance between us. Your imagination vividly depicted the place that David was describing. A narrow corridor, faint minty smell. Suddenly it was harder to breathe. I should change the subject before it's too late. So, is this your first loss? No, of course not. I won, as usual. But I didn't expect any joy from winning. Why not? Because now I crave a different kind of victory. His eyes flashed with a playful fire, and Audrey felt its heat spread through her body. And it has become the thing I desire most. But I cannot use my usual cunning in this battle. I cannot use force alone if I really want to win. This battlefield is unfamiliar to me. Somehow I doubt it. No, my cunning little witch, it's not what you think. On this battlefield, I can't get enough with one just fight. I want to go slow. To experience the pleasure of planning every step, and then to ignore the plan entirely and act on impulse. I want to make mistakes, correct them. Sounds like a really bad strategy. Because strategies don't work here. He leaned closer. Involuntarily, she leaned forward too, reducing the already small distance between them. Are you ready for your first defeat? Smiling, he whispered so close she could feel his hot breath on her lips. I can see that I won't lose. Trying to ignore the all-too-obvious flutter in her stomach, she pulled away. How I like those promises of yours. It's almost a shame to leave you again for the whole day. Oh, I do like your cruelty. Unfortunately, David, I have to get ready for the road. Of course, little witch. Try not to get involved in any more incidents. The bedroom looked different. The nightmares have left their mark on the walls. Now childhood memories hid in the corners, waiting for her to close her eyes so they could crawl out. And so they caught up with me. She hadn't been afraid of bad dreams for a long time. She worked through each one and become one with them. Much more terrible were the pleasant dreams, the ones taking the form of childhood fantasies. In them her father held her hand tightly, went down to the basement with her to prove that the monsters didn't exist. In them her mother laughed and watched stupid comedies on TV with her. Coming back to reality after the dreams was always terribly painful. It's gonna be a tough day. Thinking about the past was depressing, as usual. Meanwhile, the future was frightening with its uncertainty, and the present demanded urgent decisions. It's time to take a break from work. Phil sat in the office, lost in thought. When she noticed Audrey entering, she smiled with some reserve. Hello, you poor thing. How are you feeling? I couldn't wake up for a while, but I'm alright now. How are you? Didn't drink enough poison to avoid work, as you can see. I'm waiting for the next assignment. Audrey sat in a nearby chair and looked at the disgruntled police officer, and then she whispered conspiratorially, This is an interesting one. Calls from the other side. Are you coming with us? Is that the only thing that surprises you? She brushed aside the question and shrugged. If Miguel thinks you're ready, then I have nothing against it. Not knowing what else to say, Audrey turned to the window. The beautiful view relieved her of the awkward silence. Quietly admiring the garden seemed like the natural thing to do. Maybe I was bewitched by this place. That's why I decided to stay here so easily. How are the guys treating you? The question sounded sharp and unexpected, like an interrogation. Treating? Is that really the right word? You make it sound like I'm a prisoner. Okay, let me rephrase. Are they being nice to you? Yes, everyone is very kind to me. Really? Is she being serious? But there was no mockery in her voice, only sincere curiosity, which made Audrey feel uneasy suddenly. I don't know if you've noticed, but they don't have much affection for anyone. So if you tell me that everyone's being kind to you, that's something to think about. Following her advice, Audrey started going over the past events. The girl who was killed in the club didn't even invoke any emotion in David. Then, when Mikkel sent us to Silent Grove, he literally forgot the main goal was to help Rada. Gaziel and Raphael didn't even raise an eyebrow when the wolf tore into Ada. There's really a lot to think about here. It's no surprise that they're nice to me. That they get that we have to work side by side for a long time. And the fact is that I'm a woman plays a big role, and they're men. Whatever you say. Their fascinated conversation was interrupted when Mikkel silently entered the office. If everyone is ready, then let's not waste any time. Hanging over the town was a heavy, leaden sky. A drizzle settled on the high windows of the restaurant, blurring the outlines of the street and turning the silhouettes of passer-byers into ghosts. Oh, as though all the callers have risen from the graves to meet us. The task was simple. Find out what was happening here. Their offer to investigate was accepted by a woman named Lydia. Her deceased husband had been bothering her with phone calls for several days. She's obviously not happy about the calls. The woman was late. To make the wait more pleasant, Mikkel ordered everyone coffee. They drank in silence. Fell listened to the conversations that filled the room while Mikkel admired the gloomy landscape. Audrey tried to figure out what she wanted more, to see something supernatural or to prove that such things don't exist. Next to Phil, Mikkel behaved in a deliberately strict manner. He didn't even allow himself a sideways glance. No wonder she doesn't think he's friendly. It seemed as if there was an open rift between them, some kind of history buried in its depths, and neither of them could cross through that barrier. Are you from the detective agency? The tall, straight-backed woman with a stubborn expression stopped next to the table. My name is Mikkel. This is our evaluator, Audrey. And this is Officer Felonia. Have a seat. Lady didn't apologize for being late. She just waved at the waiter. 1 martini on the rocks. Great breakfast. All these tiresome phone calls have to stop. I hope I wasn't being deceived. I hope you really can talk to the dead. Oh, this'll be interesting. Aren't we here because you're the one talking to them? Let's talk about everything, one at a time. Lydia sipped her martini and began to reminisce. Silently. She was obviously in no hurry, and with each sip of her liquor, Felonia's patience was wearing thin. You two. She's about to explode. We need to ask some questions about her husband. When did he die? When did he first call you? What did he say to you? I have no more questions. I guess we can ask all three, so I'll start with, when did he die? 10 years have passed since his heart stopped beating. And you recognize his voice after all these years? Oh, honey, I would recognize his creaky voice anywhere. We need to ask some... Okay. When did he first call you? It was Tuesday at 10 in the morning. I remember because I was going to yoga with my friends. Otherwise you wouldn't? Even from the other side, he manages to get on my nerves. What did he say to you? He asked me what I did with his Swiss watch collection. She chuckled smugly, as if she had been waiting for this question for 10 years. I already spent the money that I got for his junk. He's a bit too late for that. Wow, she must have really loved the guy if she's calling his stuff junk. Lydia, weren't you surprised by the situation? Of course, anything can happen in life, but not like this. It's different for us. In our yoga club, every widow got a call like that. I was the last one. Our husbands are probably stirring the same pot over there. She laughed and called the waiter and asked for a refill. Oh, the call's still coming. He calls me periodically. The number is unlisted, so I can't call him back. Do you have a landline? Yes. My husband has always been terribly old-fashioned. He doesn't recognize new technology. He just keeps asking about his watches like a parrot. Like it matters what time it is in hell. And when I ask if he wants to know how his children are doing, he hangs up. Why do you call your husband... Why do your friends' husbands call them? Usually they ask them to bring something to their graves. I can't imagine how it works. Lisa's husband asked her for his gold cufflinks. Seems like there's going to be some kind of ball in hell. Didn't you contact the police? What for? This whole thing just seems like extortion, don't you think? But they only asked for their things. Yeah, really expensive things. Her answer baffled Audrey. Who are they? Lydia really doesn't see the connection? Fell's straightforwardness came to the rescue. This is just a scam. And if you and your friends hadn't organized this circus and just called the police, I wouldn't be listening to this nonsense right now. Instantly flushed with martini-flavored indignation, Lydia yelled, Honey, were you even listening to me? Do you think Lisa can't tell her husband's voice from mine? Do you think some swindler knows exactly what my husband wants to take to his grave? Lydia, he doesn't want anything, he's dead. You don't want anything, especially not to work. Have you decided to turn everything over to the police so they can laugh at the crazy old ladies? I thought your agency helped people. Raveling in their little tantrum, Lydia dramatically dabbed her completely dry eyes with the edge of a napkin. Enough. His cold voice immediately pulled her out of it. Tell us who received calls from deceased relatives, the ones who did not ask for anything to be taken to their graves. Forgetting that she had to be offended, Lydia smiled radiantly. Yes, let me think. Her sudden change of mood struck Audrey to the core. Now, the woman wouldn't look away from Mikhail's icy eyes as if her memory were contained within them. Does he have that strange effect on all women? Yes, I remember. The son of a friend of mine called her. He didn't ask for anything. She really didn't understand what he wanted. Where does she live? At the end of the street. Do you know the house number? Just go to the most luxurious mansion. You can't miss it. What's her name? Claudia. Tell us about Claudia in detail. You could write a whole novel about Claudia's life. Now, sitting more comfortably, Lydia smiled enthusiastically. She had everything a woman could want. A luxurious house, loving husband, handsome sons, brilliant career. She came to us from Denmark as a pitiful beggar, bought a tiny piece of land, got a job as a secretary, and then by some miracle she married our mayor. Even though we were friends, I still don't understand what he saw in her. God, you're a bitter old hag. I think I'm going to regret asking her to tell us this. Then she and her husband demolished her tiny house, bought the land around it, and built their family nest. What a gorgeous building. She has a closet the size of a restaurant. And she hasn't even worn half the clothes she has. And the evenings she hosted at her house, all of us girls tried to get closer to her back then. And we fought for her friendship and attention. If she doesn't get to the point, Fel will kill me. She literally drove us crazy with her boundless happiness. Well, you know how it is. Oh, clearly. I'm dying in happiness, drowning, if anything. You know you deserve everything and more, but for some reason someone else gets it. Oh, how we envied her. Until her husband died. A heart attack. That seems to be common with you ladies. Her eldest son was very young when he accidentally fell into a well in the yard of the house. And after that incident, Claudia took care of the middle one like a mother hen. Whatever happened to him again, Lydia looked up at the ceiling and flexed her fingers and thought. Oh, I remember, he fell down the stairs. Jesus, so either you people are dying of heart attacks or literally falling to your death. Her smile looked so unsettling that Audrey moved further away from her. The youngest one, the one who called her, lived to a respectable age, but he was sick all of his life. In the end, cancer got him. Claudia sold all of her possessions, even put the house up for sale, but there was no time to cure him. I wouldn't blame medicine, though, because he ended up committing... It's been a year since his death. Maybe Claudia had some kind of mental break from all this loss. It was hard to even imagine how a parent who lost their children must feel. Does she live alone? Her nephew Eric is looking after her. I see. Thank you. You managed to learn something useful. After paying, they decided to go straight to Claudia's. Lydia refused to visit her old friend, saying that if the call stopped, she would take it as a sign that the job was done. Martini's help her accept the supernatural with the inevitable calm. And so far, I'm not inclined to believe that anything supernatural at work here. Shivering from the chilly air, Audrey looked around. The mansion was truly hard to miss, towering proudly above the other houses. It looked down on the town with its boarded-up windows and grinned with its sharp spires. A true palace of sorrows. Do you think Claudia is our patient zero? It must be more important to find out who or how she became a patient in the first place. They didn't have any ideas to start with. There was no way to examine such cruelty. Did someone call just to make fun of her? Does anyone have a personal score to settle with her? Or did the scammer want her to be the first one to believe in the call, so she dragged the others along? Try to find out if she really hears the voices of her dead son, and I will find the scammer. Agreed? Of course, everyone has their own job to do. Audrey glanced at Mikhail and tried to imagine what kind of role he could be assigned in this mission. Audrey, I suspect that you have a difficult conversation ahead of you. Everyone experiences grief differently. It's hard to even guess what state she's in. It's been a year. Enough time to get back to normal. Did Mikhail seriously just ask me that? She will never return to a normal life. Her life has been divided in before and after. And considering how much loss she's gone through, she's grief-stricken path can hardly be called life. It's not even an existence, really. It's endless agony. I have never had the opportunity to heal mental wounds. I'm afraid grief can't be cured. It's not a disease. The rest of the walk to the mansion was silent. With each step along the tiled path, the noise of the town faded. Do you feel it? Yes. What are you talking about? The atmosphere around here. The dilapidated building and overgrown garden. Everything around them was weighed down by the grief of lost beauty. It seemed that everything they saw could tell the sad story of a withered family nest. Fel knocked on the door. The first living being to greet the guests was a black raven that swooped down from the roof above their heads. Audrey stumbled as she backed away from the bird on instinct. Someone's hand grabbed her elbow to keep her from falling down the stairs. Be careful, Audrey. Thank you. After making sure she was firmly on her feet, Mikhail let her go of her arm. Is the raven here in place of a watchdog? The door was opened by a blue-eyed man. Who are you here to see? Hello, Eric. We're from the Astrea Detective Agency. We need to talk to Claudia. Is she home? Yes. Why? Seeing the overly suspicious man was in no hurry to let guests into the house. Our friend Lydia asked us to help. She said that someone is mocking your aunt and calling her, introducing himself as her dead son. Lydia? Wow, so she remembered her friend after all these years. Go ahead, but it's unlikely that my aunt will be able to tell you anything useful. Managed to convince Eric to let you talk to Claudia. The spacious living room was designed for a large family. 2-4. All of its members gazed silently at the guests from the portraits in gilded frames. The house should be filled with dozens of voices, but instead there's an oppressive silence. Before I call her, there's something you need to know. My aunt is an infinitely kind but deeply unhappy woman who doesn't deserve this fate. She adopted me even when her own children were still alive. Years ago, she buried her last son, Marcus. I am her only relative. The portraits on the walls immediately acquired a good, complete story. Sad and gloomy. And I feel if I feel like your being here is making her worse, I'll throw you out. I wonder if he really cares about his aunt as much as he says he does. Eric, listen. I mean, technically I'm on her side, so yeah. We're on your side. And we're not going to reopen Claudia's old wounds. Like you, we just want to protect her from unnecessary shock. I hope so. As soon as Eric disappeared through the door, Fell headed towards an inconspicuous-looking landline. She put the phone to her ear. It doesn't work. Pulling the cord towards her, she saw a wire sticking out in different directions and voiced an obvious conclusion. Ripped out. Eric's handiwork? Soon, a stately-looking woman entered the room and scanned the guests with a misty gaze. She's like a living extension of the mansion. The shadow of her grief fell across her once beautiful face. Her shoulders sagged under the weight of a burden she carried for so many years. Are you with the police? Yes. We would like to ask you a few questions about your son. Sighing heavily, the woman sank into her nearby chair. A small cloud of dust rose around her. Which one? The youngest. We wanted to know how long ago he called you. Her impassive face was twisted with an anxiety acute and all-consuming. An anxiety that only a parent can have when questioned about their children by people in uniform who suddenly appear on their doorstep. A couple of days ago. Marcus isn't in the habit of calling me every day. I didn't even think to worry. Lifting the end of the torn phone cord, Fell asked, Your phone doesn't work. Did you know that? To be honest, your questions scare me. I don't know what's wrong with the phone. Marcus will fix it when he gets back. She's waiting for him to return. The temperature in the room suddenly dropped. It felt like tiny pieces of ice were filling Audrey's lungs. Your youngest son is supposed to return? As if looking for support, Claudia turned to Eric, who was standing silently behind her chair. Yes, Marcus. He's our network engineer. It's no problem for him to fix some cables. Excuse me, but what actually happened? Is there something wrong with Marcus? Mikhail didn't take part in the conversation. Instead, he wandered around the room in a somber mood. Audrey prayed that Fel would not reveal the whole truth to the woman, who was clearly not ready for it. When is he due to arrive? Eric had clearly not expected the guest to play along. He stopped sadly staring at the floor and perked up. He'll come home from work late in the evening. We'll wait if you don't mind. We're gonna stay here. We would stay in a hotel, but I'm afraid there's an influx of tourists in town now due to these calls. There's hardly any room for us. The house is big, of course, but there are quite a few of us living here. I do not want to be rude, but may I see your ID? Audrey's surprise, Phil had ID cards for everyone. After examining them under a magnifying glass, Claudia handed the documents back and nodded. We're sorry to put you and your family on the spot, but we have come a long way and would like to wait for Marcus. Well, still, at least give us a hint about what's going on. I am his mother, after all. I should know. He's fine. We just need a statement. If you have any chance to contact him, we would be grateful. Eric grimaced and promised to try. Auntie, I'll take you upstairs and help the guests get settled, okay? Claudia forced a smile at them before she left, the way one usually smiles at government officials. If anyone in my house bothers you, do not hesitate to tell my nephew. I don't think there's any point in talking to her. Why are we staying? There's something here. Mikhail peered at the portrait of a child hanging in the middle of the room. Ghosts? Did I really just say that? It would be better if I stay here while you ask to be shown to Marcus's room. I'm not sure if we'll spend the night here, but it's definitely worth staying until sunset. It seemed that Mikhail had forgotten the most important part again. What about the scammers? There is plenty of time before sunset. You may well find them. Interesting. They didn't even make it to Eric to take them to the right room. Eric, who now seemed strangely hunched over, silently led them to the door they wanted and left. Here comes the atmosphere, the kind you get by trying to freeze time. Everything in the room indicated that the owner would return at any moment. With freshly washed sheets on the bed and not a speck of dust on the table. Claudia doesn't dust the rooms or her living room, but she cleans her son's room every day. Or rooms. Realization that all of Claudia's deceased children were alive in her mind made Audrey feel sick. And Eric supports the story. I wonder how. Fel rummaged unceremoniously through the drawers of the desk. What are you looking for? Nothing in particular. I think there's a good chance that our ladies are being called from here. After unloading the contents of a large basket onto the floor, she kicked some wires and plastic boxes with her toe. Any thoughts on who it might be? Claudia, ghosts, or Eric? Eric? He called them because he was tired of watching his aunt suffer. Then things got out of hand. A smart girl. I'm sure that it's him. Despite the fact that Claudia gave up everything she had for her son's treatment, they are living rather well. They didn't sell the house, so where do you think the money comes from? Fel crouched down, reaching into the tangle of wires. I think Eric learned a lot from Marcus. And voices are not that hard to fake. Especially if the town is small and everyone knows each other. Fel looked at her watch. Mikhail still wants to wait until sunset. We could talk to Eric alone and find out if our suspicions are true. Or I could collect some statements from the victims and build a case. Fel paused, either thinking about what to do or expecting some kind of reaction from her colleague. Without waiting for a response, she continued. Yes, that will probably be even easier. In the interrogation room, everyone becomes much more talkative. Eric rushed into the room, though he didn't surprise anyone with his sudden appearance. Was he eavesdropping? Wait, There's no need to start a case. I'll explain everything. We're all ears. The conversation was long and contradictory. Eric really loved his aunt, who was like a mother to him. But he didn't like her friends who took advantage of her condition, her wealth, and her trust. Being a kind person, Claudia was eager to share all of her wealth with them. If they hadn't extorted gifts from her, borrowed money that they never paid back, she wouldn't have had to sell everything. When Marcus died, Claudia's mind couldn't take it. She said that he called her. At first, she was terrified, but then it was like a switch flipped inside of her. I pulled the wire out so as not to provoke any more episodes. Didn't you hear the calls? No, of course not. Soon she started seeing all of her children. I decided it would be better not to convince her otherwise. Not the best solution. To celebrate, Claudia told Lydia about the phone call, and that old hag started spreading nasty rumors about my aunt. She almost locked up in a mental institution. How could I just take it all in stride? Eric hoped that Lydia and her friends grow a conscience, but then their heartlessness had to be punished in another way financially. And what am I to do with you? I can see why he did it. Since there's no case, there's nothing to close. You will have to return everything you stole. You'll probably admit to your cruel prank, too. Before he left, Eric brought all the equipment he used for the complex operation into the room and destroyed it. He told a tragic family story that made even Fell's lips turn down. The subject seemed to mean a lot to her. Probably not wanting to show weakness, Phil began to stuff the twisted wires back into the box. Maybe I should leave so I don't embarrass her. Stay. Audrey started to help her pick up the scattered things. They worked in silence, not trying to start a conversation that no one needed at the moment. Both trying to process everything that Eric had told them, both trying to figure out if they were doing the right thing. When the room was back to its original pristine appearance, Phil slowly sat down on the floor. She rested the back of her head against the wall, using it for support. Her tired gaze lingered on her colleague. You probably think I get soft too easily. You mean with Eric? Audrey gently sat down next to her. She tried not to sit too close, but their thighs still touched. Phil didn't move away, and Audrey didn't either. I don't think so. I wasn't like this before. It was so strange to hear someone blame themselves for showing empathy. You didn't emphasize? No, not with strangers. What changed? I have no one left. Phil turned her head and peered thoughtfully in her colleague's face. It was as if she was assessing the risks of a sudden revelation. Do you have a family? In Audrey's mind, a whole crowd lined up behind the image of her parents. Always a crowd. Huge family where everyone is no one to each other. I have a friend, Ruth. Not bad. Audrey didn't want to talk about loneliness. The day was already sad enough, it seemed, filled to the brim with unshed tears from everyone involved. She wanted to distract herself with something completely absurd, far removed from anything in this house. By the way, I was arrested once. The sentence came out of nowhere and worked perfectly. Phil arched her eyebrow in surprise. You? Really? Her sincere doubt sounded insulting. Why are you so surprised? What did you do? Forget to return your textbooks to the library? Of course not. How could you forget to return your books? I was late for an exam, crossed the road in the wrong place. I told the policeman that I was in a hurry and would come back later to pay the fine, but he wouldn't listen. I tried to run away from him. He caught up with me at the entrance of the university and arrested me for non-compliance. God, does Mikkel know who he hired? Their laughter was almost hysterical, as if it was all their other emotions were being released along with it. After she calmed down, Phil looked at her colleague in a different way, somehow. If I were to arrest you, all you would have to do is smile at me. And you'd let me go right away? I would definitely wouldn't take you to the police station. God, do your bosses know who they hired? Fell's gaze softened and drifted to Audrey's lips. Audrey couldn't resist and responded in kind. Her smile really suits her. I'm glad you showed up at Astrea. I guess I am too. Fell hasn't had a heart-to-heart talk with anyone in a long time. She will remember this. Fell supported her decision, but refused to join her. Do you not want to cross paths with him again? After hiding behind the clouds all day, the sun finally began to go down beneath the horizon. In the twilight, it was hard to see Mikkel right away. Besides, the seated silhouette was too relaxed to fit the image of a strict boss. Mikkel? Audrey approached and noticed that he had taken a surprising liberty. He was wearing a jacket and the collar of his shirt was unbuttoned. He was also holding a book. I take it you found our scammer? Yes. The calls will stop. I think we can leave. Mikkel spoke quickly, gentle but firm. Let's stay a little longer. Maybe we can find out who called Claudia while we're here. It was her subconscious, clearly. Her gaze fell on another chair. Should I talk to him? Yeah, no diamond choice for this one. This one's a freebie. Do you mind? No, of course not. It was unusual to see Mikkel like this. So, this is how you relax, by reading? What should I talk to him about? Oh, there's our diamonds right there. Talk about him. Talk about the book. Talk about work. Leave. I'll tell you one thing, this book is super long, and I'm fine with that, but holy man. The dim, intimate lighting of the room hid everything from view. More than that, it almost concealed an embarrassment. The question that had been the tip of her tongue for so long finally found its way out. Could you tell me something about yourself? We live under the same roof, but I don't know anything about you. Audrey was ready for the question to crash against an icy wall, but he smiled warmly. Neither do I about you. Well, I think I should be more worried about you. And yet, here you are, next to me. Only the roofs of our heads have changed. There was no need for her to dig deep to find the answer to an unasked question. For some reason, you inspire confidence in me. Do I look that harmless? On the contrary, you look dangerous, like a hunter in hiding. But I don't feel like prey. Does that mean you hid with me? The metaphorical situation suddenly seemed very real. We were sitting in twilight, speaking in half-whispers, waiting for something. It looks like it. You don't have to wait for the beast to appear with me. You wanted to know something. I suggest we exchange honest answers. Will you answer my question, then? Absolutely. Audrey had a whole list in her head, and it was not easy to choose the most important one. Astrea is full of mysteries. It's like I'm in a secret society. Why did you choose to work for Astrea? I had no choice. None of us did. I suspect you didn't come to us because you've dreamed of it all your life either. But I can leave any time, just like you. You can, but you are unlikely to leave. She immediately wanted to challenge his words, but she didn't want her stubbornness to be met with indifference. Why try to convince him that I can leave when the truth is that I can't? Or don't want to? For some reason, the thought that she could lose much more than that, just her jaw saddened her. Or she longed for intimate conversations, for affectionate touches, for warmth. What made me think I could find all that here? At the very least, I wouldn't want you to leave. And if you suddenly have such thoughts, I will do everything in my power to convince you not to. There was no tenderness in his gaze, but there was a firm determination that convinced her that he cared. And Audrey believed every word he said. Or maybe she just wanted to believe. Now it's your turn. I'll save my questions for later. Or you don't know what to ask, or am I an open book to you? No, not at all. I'll ask the question when the answer is important enough for you to say aloud. It seems like there are even more questions now. Now you owe Mikkel an answer. You can spend more time with Mikkel. What should I talk to him about? Talk about the book. What were you reading? To answer the question, he had to look at the cover. Some kind of historical novel. Author's name provided no clarification. Is it interesting? It's passable. Usually people choose books more intentionally. It was nice to tease the boss. It was even nicer that he allowed her to tease him in private. He held back a smile and gave her an excuse that wasn't really necessary. I came across it by chance. It was lying on this table under a layer of dust. There's nothing wrong with being immersed in something passable. It's usually much more selective. In everything. I don't doubt that. I wonder what kind of woman would be able to impress you. Her meddlesome imagination immediately pictured them side by side. We'd look good together. You have a mischievous look on your face right now. What are you thinking about? Being too selective and where that can lead someone? He didn't take this interested gaze off of her as he answered briefly. Toward perfection. Time had passed by unnoticed during their conversation. I hope Mikkel doesn't plan to finish reading the book. The thick spine looked impressive. It's at least 1,000 pages long. Will you be able to read it before sunset? Slyly narrowing her eyes, she allowed herself a joke. Or will you commit a crime? Will you let me steal it? Of course not. I will not be your accomplice. So, you'll have to show solidarity with the book's owner and leave the ending open. Audrey glanced at the brown spine and noticed the thin tab of a bookmark peeking out from somewhere in the middle. Whoever read it here didn't have a chance to reach the end. The pleasant atmosphere was washed away by sadness. Not all endings will be known to us. Perhaps we have to come to terms with that. I guess so. Wow. Never thought of it like that. That's deep. Talk about work, why not? Well, what happens if we ever find that mystic trace of ourselves? That will depend on how it happens to manifest. But in general, such things should be disposed of, if possible. Even if it is supernatural? Do you think that communication with the world of the dead can be of any use to the living? She tried to imagine what the world would be like if loved ones did not disappear after death. If there was always the chance of them to say those important last words they never got to in life. Those words would probably never be spoken aloud. And it would be even harder to recognize the value of our loved ones. Try not to get ahead of yourself. This is better for everyone. When you say that, I stop understanding why I was chosen. You can believe that this isn't all just a big coincidence, but I personally know that there are no coincidences. We all have a role to play. I hope yours will be much better than the rest of your colleagues. And that's it. We'll leave in a few hours. I want to make sure that there's nothing to worry about and that all is well in this mansion. Audrey didn't understand how he was going to do that exactly, and she didn't argue. Waiting for the devil to jump out at him, perhaps. I'll tell Fel that we won't be staying the night. Okay. He turned away thoughtfully and stared at the book again. Audrey walked as quietly as possible, trying not to disturb the mournful silence of the mansion. She remembered how worried Claudia had been about the guests not being able to get any rest because of the noise. Maybe we should have convinced Eric to send her in for treatment. The torn cable lay lifeless on the floor, a reminder that everyone in the house was tiptoeing around an old woman's mental illness. It just making it worse. It was a difficult question to answer. Was it worth fighting for her sanity if she had to go back through hell to do so? To drag her through torment so that in the end an old woman would live out her last years drowning in bottomless grief? Audrey jumped. She didn't immediately realize what she was hearing. She turned to Mikkel, but he was engrossed in reading. Hadn't heard anything. He really didn't hear. What was that? Mikkel? The phone rang again, deafening. Startled by the sound, Audrey picked it up without thinking, just to bring blissful silence back to the house. She brought it to her ear and listened. The moans coming from the receiver were mixed with hysterical laughter. The screams were the sound of something slashing through the air. And then everything went quiet. In the silence, Audrey heard the frightened voice of a man. Mom, take me away from here, Mom. There's no one here. Only me. Me and my executioners. Boiling water and bloody pus down my throat. Marcus? Audrey? The floor swayed under her feet. She had to lean against the wall to keep from falling. The voice on the other end had changed completely. It was now a voice that Audrey could pick out from 1,000 others. It was the voice of her mother. Listen to me, Audrey. Listen. My dear girl. Mom? He's close, Audrey. He's coming for you. He's coming for you, all of you. Hi, dear. Okay, I give you 4 out of 5 because of the Eric situation. We'll talk about her in a second. Rate it. 4 to faith, 0 to skepticism, 3 to reputation. Our skepticism's falling a little bit behind. Hold on, I see diamonds. Well, first and foremost, got my diamonds. 2. June. Looks like this book will continue in June. Rest in peace. Anyway, with that being said, hopefully you all did enjoy. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. Head down the description. Plenty of things to check out there, whatnot. Leave a comment. Let me know what you thought. So, the reason why I gave it 4 out of 5 stars is the whole Eric situation was just so quick and just abrupt, and it just made like the whole case and everything else seem completely pointless. However, you know, when it came to everything else, it was interesting, the drama and everything for what was going on with the boys, or may I say the men in the house. I also this really weird, like, you know, everyone's at odds with one another and yet they work together, and it's just a really weird working environment to have. I don't know if Mikkel was ignoring the phone on purpose. Because maybe it was for us to answer, or who knows what. I guess it's something that we will find out in time, and then also who is he, who's coming, whatnot. Something tells me it has to do with the doors, right? So yeah. Let me know your thoughts down below. Otherwise, I gotta say, this is one of the longest books on any app that I've ever read. So yeah. Every episode is seriously like almost an hour, if not more than an hour. So I'm just saying. Other than that, thanks for watching. Catch you all later. Peace out.